Today you find yourself standing at the corner of 19th Street and Arctic Avenue in Virginia Beach. It may seem like an ordinary intersection, but in 1980 it was home to a vital piece of cultural and musical history, the Virginia Beach Civic Center, affectionately referred to as the Dome by locals. This iconic venue, with its distinctive golf ball shape, hosted legends like Jimi Hendrix, Ray Charles, Blondie, and the Rolling Stones. But on April 7, 1980, it wasn't rock stars who took center stage at the Dome. Instead, it became the setting for a critical battle in the struggle for LGBTQ+ rights. Bus after bus arrived carrying hundreds of people from local conservative churches for, of all things, a library board meeting. They were there to voice their opposition to Our Own, Tidewater's local gay and lesbian newspaper. The issue at hand, whether the publication should be distributed in branches of the Virginia Beach Public Library. There too, though in smaller numbers, were those in support of the paper. David Palmer, a staff member of the oceanfront branch of the library and a gay man, describes what it was like to be at the Dome that day in April of 1980.
The churches bussed in people, and it was terrifying. They packed the Dome. What did it seat? A couple thousand, I think, and it was full. And they were angry and violent, not violent, but angry and vocal, and made their position very, very clear that they wanted this abomination out of the libraries. It was frightening to watch because it was so many people and it was so vocal and it was so directed at people like me.
Welcome to a pivotal moment in queer history. As you journey through this virtual reality experience, you'll bear witness to the passions and tensions that gripped this historic event. You'll discover the stories of the people who fought to make their voices heard and the legacy they left behind for future generations. So, immerse yourself in this powerful narrative and step into a defining moment for the LGBTQ+ community. 2 years before the events at the Dome, Jim Early, a member of the UUGC, the Unitarian Universalist Gay Caucus, asked for permission to distribute Our Own as part of a new program allowing community groups to leave materials for library patrons. The UUGC was the small group of people who founded and maintained Our Own, and they were staunch supporters of the paper during the controversy that would follow.
I had asked the director of library in Virginia Beach, Marcy Sims, for permission to drop off multiple copies for people to pick up. The library had inaugurated a public forum, information forum, and invited people to bring their brochures for various organizations and associations and events. And they would be placed in a certain place for each of the branches, at each of the branches. And so we had several moles who were branch librarians as members of the UUGC who let us know about this new policy, inviting people to bring their community information. And so they suggested that we might want to consider leaving some newspapers at each branch. So the director of libraries, Marcy Sims, she wouldn't give me the permission directly. She said, "You'll have to get that from each of the branch librarians." Well, I knew two of the branch librarians were in the bag because they were members of the UUGC. But I went to the other three and got everybody's permission to drop off newspapers. And for about a year, we were leaving fewer than 100 newspapers at all 5 of the branch libraries combined.
Beginning in September 1978, Our Own was left in the vestibule of Virginia Beach Public Library branches each month. A year and a half later, the March 1980 issue of Our Own was delivered to Virginia Beach libraries, and within days, an article appeared in the Beacon, the newspaper that served the Virginia Beach area. The first line of the article, quote, "A gay newspaper containing sexually explicit cartoons is being distributed in Virginia Beach public libraries," unquote, set the tone for what would be months of debate over Our Own's presence in the city's libraries. The article pointed to a drawing in the Lesbians front and center section on page 6 of the March issue of Our Own. The article also pointed out a cartoon on page 9. The cartoon, in fact, had been reprinted with the heading, "From Our Friends at National Lampoon." Though no other commentary was included, the scare quotes around friends and the reliance on gay stereotypes in each of the 4 reprinted cartoons indicates that Our Own staff included the cartoons as a form of critique rather than endorsement. They weren't celebrating the young boy sucking his penis-shaped thumb, as the Beacon article subtly suggested, but were calling out the ways that mainstream straight media relied on homophobia for laughs. Jim Early would later say, quote, "The cartoon was intended to show how the heterosexual press depicts gay people," unquote. The issue escalated quickly. 2 days after the article in the Beacon, an article in the Virginian Pilot reported that Virginia Beach Councilman Buddy Riggs wanted the paper, quote, "taken out of the libraries completely," unquote. Riggs and other council members had been sent copies of Our Own, and though he admitted that he threw it away without reading it, he nevertheless compared the newspaper to Playboy and went on to say, quote, "I don't want any children to pick up the newspaper by mistake. There's a certain element in any city that wants to read that kind of trash. Let them find it somewhere else," unquote. Though Library Director Marcy Sims did not find the material worthy of removing the paper from libraries, March issues were temporarily removed until a library board meeting in April could review it and determine whether it was considered pornographic. Riggs insisted, however, that the matter be discussed at the next city council meeting and declared, quote, "I would like to vote to get rid of it. I got 2 calls today. One man said he won't let his children go into any of our libraries until the paper is removed," unquote. A series of editorials and letters to the editors followed.
The library board is the appropriate forum to determine whether the publication's informational value outweighs the crudity that creeps in. But a city council election campaign is getting started. Tilting with gay journals is great sport at such times. It's one way of lining up the decent folks behind the coyote whose campaign may be sagging. Inevitably, the call has been sounded for a full discussion of Our Own in a city council meeting. Such an airing could be disastrous. It would place the issue at the center of an emotional maelstrom, with sanity being sacrificed to the howls of a righteous mob.
It seems to me that Councilman Riggs and McCoy are being caught up in the Anita Bryant syndrome. I stopped to wonder if they realize the size of the gay community here in Virginia Beach. I hope they're aware that many homes and businesses are owned and operated by gays and that they contribute a great deal to the tax dollar and voting power in this city. I'd also like to know if Dr. McCoy and Mr. Riggs allow this element to do business with them in their place of business.
Attempts to ban the newspaper Our Own, published by the Unitarian Universalist gay community from the Virginia Beach public libraries, are a negation of intellectual freedom and undermine the foundations.
I am against censorship of library materials by politicians. Controversial matter can be put on upper shelves in libraries where children would not have access to it if they were curious or interested.
There was one seminal moment when the library board decided to hold a hearing on how they could amend their policy, so they asked the UGC to provide 10 speakers for the proposal, and they were going to give equal time and opportunity to 10 spokespersons for the opposition. And so on the day of the library board meeting, we were supposed to go to the usual room in City Hall down at Princess Anne Courthouse and make our presentations. But when we got there, we learned that they had changed the venue from Princess Anne because the room was too small to accommodate the hordes of people that would show up for this. So they moved it to the Dome, which was on Pacific Avenue. It was sort of the scope for Virginia Beach, and much smaller, of course. But it could accommodate, 500, 600, 700 people. And so about 500 people showed up. Partly, the numbers were beefed up because the Rock Church, in particular, and perhaps people from Regent University, or Regent College, I guess it was called then, they bussed in school children, and they wanted to have the school children there to show the city council members and the library board members how deleterious having a gay newspaper in their library would be, and on these tender minds. So it was just quite a famous moment. It was akin to the Scopes trial on evolution. I mean, it was that type of event.
After that day at the Dome, the library board voted to recommend that a single copy of Our Own be kept at each branch instead of allowing free and open distribution of the paper. 2 months later, Virginia Beach City Council agreed with this decision, and branches started accepting one copy of the paper. 3 months later, in September of 1980, the UUGC filed a lawsuit with the help of the ACLU to reinstate distribution of the newspaper and Virginia Beach library branches. But before that case could be decided, local conservative churches, like those that had rallied at the Dome earlier that year, organized a referendum. On November 4th, voters were asked, quote, "Shall publications whose primary purpose is to depict or advocate by picture or word homosexual acts be displayed, distributed, or received into the public libraries of the city of Virginia Beach?" Unquote.
Where local opposition to the gay newspaper Our Own first began, Tabernacle Baptist Church, headquarters for the Citizens for the Family group that first got the referendum on the ballot. And we're with Reverend Dr. Rodney Bell, who is the head of that group and who was instrumental in seeing it pass tonight. You've been working at the polls all day. Now, what have the voters told you?
Howard, I believe that the voters has overwhelmingly expressed their disgust for the library board and the position that the library board has taken in this referendum.
You've received the votes you were looking for. What happens now?
I call upon the City Council to act in compliance with the voice of the people, and if necessary, replace the library board, especially Mr. Jack Robertson. I feel that he is incompetent.
Meanwhile, at the Unitarian Universalist Gay Community headquarters in Norfolk, work on the next edition of Our Own goes on, while referendum returns are monitored. The editor of Our Own, Gary Hankins, doesn't see the vote as a resounding defeat, as some have characterized it.
The number of people that voted yes on the referendum and the number of people who refused to vote at all clearly show that we have a lot of support in the city of Virginia Beach. If the City Council decides to make this advisory referendum implemented, there are groups such as the Freedom to Read Foundation of the American Library Association, the American Civil Liberties Union, and the Friends of the Virginia Beach Library who will sue the city of Virginia Beach to restore distribution and display of the paper.
Both the lawsuit brought by the UUGC and ACLU and Reverend Rodney Bell's homophobic crusade to get the paper permanently removed from public libraries kept the issue in the news locally and nationally. Bell made his views about the paper and the people who read it very clear.